You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Folks, welcome back to the show. Matt, the hottest topic in our industry, probably other than supply chain issues right now, yeah, exactly, is sustainability. There's S's everywhere. Every conversation we have with folks around product and development, design, materials, all the operations side is focused around this idea of sustainability. It's a big term. It's a big idea. Brands are working really hard to figure out what that means for them and what kind of product they can create around that. And we thought we'd give them a little bit of help along the way from the consumer side, right? So from what you're hearing, Matt, from all the executives you talk to, is this like front of mind when they're thinking about sustainability and making new sales to consumers?
Yeah, I mean, Andy, we've heard this our entire career. Customer's king, right? You hear that all the time. And if the customer is confused as to what your sustainability claims are, they can't really rule like you want them to rule, right? You got to tap into what their insights are. And you have done a phenomenal job at the helm as the lead on our sustainability efforts for FDRA. It's our most active issue, and you're leading it like a champ. And because of that, you had the idea that, hey, if customer's king and sustainability is really brackish right now, people don't understand really what terms mean what, then why don't we go and ask the customer? And so it was a novel idea, but the results were awesome.
Yeah, we've got a lot of great feedback since we launched this report. We went with our partner, First Insight, which provides a technology solution around helping brands better understand consumers, what they'll purchase, type, trend, style, price, etc. They'll run those surveys up front, and they helped us run this survey to 1,000 nationwide shoe shoppers about how they understand sustainability when we talk to them about it, what they prioritize, especially so that if you're running operations, you want to put your efforts towards what the consumer cares about. So you want to do good by the environment and good, by your workforce, especially the factory, but you also need to get an ROI out of that work. So how do you prioritize that to do that? So this survey, we did a really interesting deep dive into all these different topics and issues, from packaging, product, materials, price, all these different things that help brands create better strategies, better target their marketing towards different age groups and different regions in different categories, but also just get smarter about this and how we refine our language so that there's so much noise out there. So hopefully this report will provide some insight. So this is a recording from the webinar we did with our membership base. We normally don't do this, but we're releasing it out because we feel it's important that everybody across the industry gets some insights. If you're an FDRA member, we can give you the report. Just contact us. You can get the full report and all the crosstabs. But we feel like these insights, can be spread out across the industry, and hopefully you can grab something from that. So let's go ahead and roll the tape so you guys can jump into this and listen to a little bit of our conversation about what we found when we asked 1,000 consumers about understanding sustainability and prioritizing what is important to them around sustainability. Hey everybody, welcome to today's very important webinar. Thank you for joining us today. As people come in, I'm just going to talk to a lot of people to load in. We had over 200 people sign up for this today, so thank you guys for joining us today. I hope everybody is safe and healthy where you are. I hope sales are booming. And this webinar is focused on helping it boom even more around sustainability. It also is focused around operational realignment to make sure you're getting the most ROI you can out of your sustainability goals and initiatives to align to the cash register. So as we start today, first of all, I do right off the bat want to thank our partners at First Insight. We've been working with First Insight for several years now. They provide a unique software solution for companies to get the first insight on their designs and their prototypes to see how those engage with consumers, what prices might be best to put out into the marketplace. So right off the bat, I'm going to introduce Gretchen to talk a little bit about what they do and how they can help, especially around sustainability and sustainability insights with consumers. And then we're going to jump right into the report. I'm hoping we can get through this in maybe 30 minutes or so. This is being recorded, so you can grab this after the fact in case we went through something you don't see it. I will be dropping in the link to the full report towards the end of this webinar, so you can grab it off the chat box. If you have to drop off early, just send me an email and I'll send you the report as well. Anything else I missed? Oh, if you have questions as we go through this today, this is very casual, as I like to be. But please drop it into the Q&A, not the chat box, but the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get to those in real time as we go through it and bounce around. But before we get into the report, Gretchen, thank you guys for being such a great partner and running this for us as experts in surveying consumers to get critical insights. So I'll just turn it over to you really quickly to explain what you guys are working on.
Thanks very much. So thanks, Andy, for having us today. Are you seeing a single slide right now?
Yep, I sure am.
Perfect. Fantastic. So we're likewise really excited about the partnership with FDRA and the great work that FDRA and now with Fannie as part of the fold are doing in the industry, footwear, but then really spilling over even beyond that. And so a key reason that we're so interested in partnering is that we are really very heavily focused, like Andy said, on helping companies to really test their new offerings, largely historically product, but also experience and branding, employee experience even with their customers, consumers, before taking things to market. And so, this just gives a bit of an overview of how we approach this around engaging with consumers digitally, getting their feedback around customer experience, product experience, brand experience, employee experience, processing that through our proprietary algorithm to then give actionable feedback that helps companies to really pick the winning offerings and put those ones out in the market. And so we're serving well over 150 to 200 companies today, globally across a variety of sectors, and our results have been shown to be predictive across geographies, time, and different categories. And so going into just one of the things, as Andy said, we'll share a little bit about the things that First Insight does. One reason that FDRA decided to come to us is that we have actually been doing consumer research for quite some time. And all during COVID, even starting the end of February last year, we started doing studies to understand how the coronavirus was impacting consumer behaviors, purchase decisions, how concerned they were about it. And so we've continued to run those studies. And the most recent one, I pulled out one data point to share with you all that the good news is that we are starting to see the level of concern about in-store activities decreasing. And so specifically around trying on shoes, the percentage of people who said that they were concerned or very concerned about this has, ramped way up last, Christmas time, if you will, winter, but then has fallen back down to below where we were last summer. And so, it's down 13% overall. So movement in the right direction. You can read the full report and see it on firstinsight.com. And I'll leave the punchline to you to figure out about whether and how this is translating to people actually buying more in store. So to show a little bit about how the solution works, we engage with consumers on behalf of our customers, either with members of their CRM database or third-party respondents that we can help secure. We help put these product offerings or branding campaigns or other items to be tested in front of the consumers, enable them to give feedback about price and about whether they love it or hate it. Also can give verbatim comments about what they think of the product or offering. And then we process that into actionable results, and we can turn this around very quickly. certainly in comparison to other kinds of testing, to give input across different geographies of how products are resonating. Likewise, give a feel for the shape of the demand curve and how much demand there is at a variety of different price points. We can also help to segment the results. In this case, it's by age, but we can also do this along lines of specific retailers or types of retailers as customers, or other demographics, whatever survey questions our customers include in their tests, we can segment along those. And then, finally, the overall results are really showing the value score, which is the real indicator of how a product will perform when it hits the market, as well as a prediction of the average unit retail, and the information about sentiment, whether people love it or hate it or somewhere in between. Wanted to bring home also that we are already doing testing with our customers about sustainability and various attributes and how those are impacting the perceived value of products. So in this case, these are swim trunks, and there was testing done around which way of labeling this recycled content attribute would resonate most, and eco was the winning name. In this second case, there was a test that we helped to run around whether or not to include the name, the attribute recycled in the description of the product, and it drove a 12% higher valuation by the consumers, which was extremely important in these days when e-com is kind of king in terms of how we're able to get products to market. Welcome you to reach out if you have any questions for us at any time, and thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. So I think it's really interesting that we can take this survey that we're about to show you right now, and you could actually, when you work with First Insight, fold in questions or ideas and actually ask consumers questions based on specific SKUs and specific shoe types and offerings about how you communicate to them, and then whether they would pay more or less. And we've got a little bit of that in here. So I'm going to jump right into it. I'm going to pull up my screen. I'm actually going to go through the report itself as we go through it. So here's our lovely cover that we have with all our sustainable pictures. But this is really around what we were trying to get at, is in one way it's marketing. How do we better target market sustainability? How do we better create language that connects? But also for operations teams, designers, development, material teams, and production, how do we align our goals, objectives to what consumers are looking for so that we actually get that ROA or ROI back at the cash register? So I'm going to get down. Let's do that. So first thing, here's a page on FDRA and First Insight. Methodology, super important in terms of how we're dealing with what we're asking. We surveyed 1,000 shoppers across the U.S. It was balanced between age, geography, sex, and income. This is the first time that we've ever done a survey like this. This is the first time it's been industry-wide, meaning we had several calls and several working groups on this where over 100 shoe companies and experts came together, formulated questions that they wanted to ask consumers specifically, and get the feedback around that. And I do want to say special thanks to a few people in here. It's definitely Ann and Bao with Stoll Reeves. Ann came up with the idea that we needed to do a nationwide survey to ask consumers what their opinions were about language in particular. But also, I want to thank Ashley and Aaron at Wolverine Worldwide. I went to them a lot to help formulate how we get these questions correct so that we're not biased, meaning we're not asking or we're not pushing people one way or the other, but we're actually just throwing it out there and saying, what do you really think about this? So that the responses that we got are not biased. They're actually truthful, they're honest, and they're a good look at the average American across the board. So, and then I do want to thank our annual Shoe Sustainability Program sponsors: Allbirds, VF, L&E, Wolverine, RG Berry, Nike, Deckers, and Material Exchange have contributed financially to our program this year so that we can do reports like this and work on other key projects. And I really want to thank them because it frees us up to work on interesting things we normally wouldn't be able to. Sometimes we hit dead ends. Sometimes we find the way forward, and sometimes we just hit a cul-de-sac and turn right back around. But it allows us to really tackle some of these things in ways that we normally would not be able to. So thank you to them. So right off the bat, Gretchen and I are going to kind of do a back and forth on this, on what we're looking at when we saw this. But we basically wanted to get at right at the very start is how educated are our shoppers? What are they seeing around sustainability or eco-friendly or environmental messaging? And it's very interesting. Footwear is at 30%, and that's right in line with fashion and clothing in general, which is about 28%. And you can see all the different industries on here. Again, towards the end, I will drop in the chat box a link to the full report. If you have questions as we go through this, please put those in the Q&A at the bottom, and we'll get to those. Generally speaking, 75%. So if you look right at none of these is 24%, meaning that 24% of these people we asked about sustainability aren't paying attention or haven't seen it. But about 75% of consumers now see sustainable marketing in different industries. And in particular, they see it about 30% of the time in footwear. And then down below, I think if you look at the recognition by age, it's not a real shock that younger generations see it more than older generations. Gretchen, as you look at this, I don't know if you have any thoughts to add.
I would just say that this is consistent with what we've seen in past, and also that Gen Z in particular, we did a study specifically around sustainability and the impact on shopping habits. And, Gen Z in particular is the most apt generation, the generation most inclined to make decisions about purchases based on their values and what's important to them. And sustainability is ranking high with them. So we were not at all surprised to see them at the top of this list.
Yeah. So maybe if you're marketing sustainability, maybe baby boomers aren't your target market when you're trying to sell shoes. Then we went a little bit further into language around it. So the start of the survey really is about what are you seeing? What do you understand? And then we get in a little bit more depth. So this is part of the understanding aspect of asking about, we're trying to reduce our environmental footprint in a number of ways. What language resonates best with you when you see sustainable marketing to you? So, we talk about, we listed all these out, and we basically said choose all that apply. We didn't want to segment one over the other. So, when you look at this, obviously eco-friendly really stands out, and sustainable probably stands out because it's in the question. It's the whole question and the whole result. So you get that. But eco-friendly stands out. And I think that kind of jives with a lot of what we're seeing in the marketplace around the marketing of eco-friendly. Responsibly sourced is there, environmentally preferred, eco-conscious, none of these. And I think I think the respondents see eco-friendly more and choose that more. I wonder, and this is just me, but I wonder when we market sustainable, if it's such a broad term that they see that as noise, and they don't really connect as well as eco-friendly, maybe a softer language to that. But then again, you see the breakdown at the bottom about eco-friendly messaging by age. Again, Gen Z was dominant in this. There's a couple of other breakouts we did. 43% of males prefer eco-friendly, as do 48% of females. Baby boomers chose none of these as the highest percent, interestingly enough. So we do go into this, and I do caution as we look at language, very important. And this is at the very start, but the FTC green guidelines, whatever you use to market as a whole, you have to be specific, and you have to qualify, and you have to list out. And if there's comparisons, they have to be like for like, and that includes product. So slipper for slipper, and as well, and we've gone into this before with Stoll Reeves, and age of study. So if your age of study is out, if it's more than 10 years, it's kind of not like for like in terms of where footwear production is today and process and materials. So when you look at this, please, take this and look at how you want to use your language and who you target. But again, caution, FTC green guidelines are not to be messed around with, and we'll cover more of that throughout the rest of the year. Gretchen, when you see this, I'm guessing you probably have seen this in other studies as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. All right. Go to the next one. So we asked to rank in order of importance when shopping. What's most important for you? Again, we kind of let this kind of a little bit open so that we got real honest responses. But we basically were asking, what's the most important to you when you're looking online at a pair of shoes or in the store? They're looking for specific descriptions of materials. So they want to see what actually was in the shoe that makes it sustainable. They are interested in the process of making the shoes. That was the second. So if you look at 50% first choice was 26% on the material side, and then 24 was on overall company goals. So if you're looking to prioritize what you're talking about around sustainability, I think a lot of people are doing this, but you talk about the materials and the product, then you talk about the process. Number 2 at 45% was the process. And then you talk about the company goals as a whole. And I think most companies are doing this pretty well. And I think below that too was another breakout, which we did. How much do you research? So how much is it between, if we post this description up, are you going to go check it on Google? Are you going to try to understand what recycled truly means? Are you going to go to our website and look at how we talk about processes? Is there more in-depth research than what we are listing? And truthfully, we look at this, and it probably is all of us, but they're probably really expecting brands and retailers to list it out on the page itself. They're shopping for a product. They're not looking for research. But we asked this question in particular because that means that we have to be even more in depth about what qualifies sustainable product for the consumer, because many of these folks are not going off to look, and millennials and Gen Z, they talk about how they'll Google it. They might visit the website, but equally, if you look at the third row there, sometimes I try to learn more, but I usually don't investigate further. I mean, that's most of us, I would say, but you look at that as pretty honest. More than a third of respondents are just saying they kind of expect it to happen there. And then again, in our analysis, there's more breakouts by age and shoppers. But Gretchen, as you see this, what comes to mind when you take a look at these two questions?
Well, I certainly see a lot of consistency here in terms of, if you look at the difference in responses between the baby boomers and Gen Z, where 60% of the boomers saying, they just don't see the claims. It's not really registering, but the three younger generations included here, definitely are viewing it differently, and their answers are skewed in that direction. So, it does make it challenging, right? Because we put our footwear out there in the store, and some consumers who come by are boomers and some are Gen Z. So, it can create an interesting challenge and opportunity in how to market it. What we don't see is any indication that sustainability is a turnoff for boomers. So, that's it doesn't go to that extreme.
That's a great point.
That's something to bear in mind.
And I always wonder too, as we look forward towards how people are shopping in the future and what kind of software and technology there is, I think this is a real issue where targeting marketing means getting more people into your rewards program, knowing their age, their geography, and looking at this kind of stuff and better segmenting your product to match what they're looking for on your websites. And I think obviously as technology improves, we'll be able to do that a lot better. But again, the report will give you some insights on these issues. Here we started going a little bit more in depth about how we talk about sustainability on a pair of shoes in particular. So we asked what they understand, what they're looking for. Will they go a little bit more in depth? Here we asked specifically about, when you think about when a shoe company says this shoe's sustainable, what's one of the first things that pops into your mind, right? And so by and large, and again, we did this to where it was weighted. These rankings are weighted, but we basically said what comes to mind, like choose different things that apply. But for this, it was ranked from highest to lowest priority. So they ranked it on a scale 1 to 7. We listed all these different things we could think of, and they listed it. Durability came out across every age category. I think every region, and sex and income, everybody thinks durability. this jives with other reports that I've seen and talked to across the industry that the first thing people think about when sustainability is mentioned is the durability. I mean, there's two things to that. I think one is sustainability itself means longevity in some way or durability. But I think it speaks to the value play. They're looking for value. Sustainability for a lot of people, maybe they purchase shoes based on the sustainability itself. But I think most people purchase shoes based on cost, comfort, fit, and sustainability and style. So it's part of a package. So I think the durability speaks there. The surprise was the animal welfare that popped up. Wasn't expecting to be quite so high when listed in this. I think sometimes we work on this a lot. So maybe we have the curse of knowledge where we think more about environmental stuff, less maybe animal welfare stuff as part of this, or so the different issues that pop up are always interesting. I would have assumed that something like recycled materials would have been higher or new processes would have been second, but animal welfare was too. I've spoken with other people about this as well. Some consumer analysts just point to the fact there's been a large marketing campaign around animal welfare issues over the last several years. So it's front of mind when people see that from the marketing perspective. But also when you talk about animal welfare in general, I mean, if you're a pet owner in some way, it somehow sticks with you that you see that and you think about the welfare and you attach it in some way to your animal, even less generally to cattle or something else like that. But this durability and this animal welfare actually is in other surveys that we have seen. And again, in the analysis, we break it out. But these are kind of the rankings, as people say. You say sustainability on a pair of shoes, this is what they're looking for or thinking about, where you can better address your marketing language to that. We also went further into what durability means, because I think it's really interesting to say durability. So it was kind of fortuitous that we asked this question, but we did think about this because we had heard from other people that durability keeps popping up. So we said, okay, well, what does that mean to you as a consumer? And we did a breakout by age here, which I think is really fascinating. But you have a third of people who said it's got to be more than 3 years. So nice pair of probably leather shoes is what most people might think about. A third said 1 to 2 years. So they got to last a pretty good time. And then you have below 1 year, you have a percent there that as well. But, obviously if you look at the split, baby boomers to Gen Z, very different expectations. And I think that speaks to the construction and the type of shoes baby boomers maybe grew up with. And it speaks to the Generation Z kind of casual, athletic, fast fashion brunch shoes. So I don't know if it's chicken or the egg or how to consider that, but it's very different when you talk to Gen Z about durability and what their expectation is for their shoes versus someone who's a little bit older, middle age or older when it comes to this. So Gretchen, I'll pause here and you can take a look at this too and share what you think.
One observation on the durability factor overall is that even though the questions were phrased as being related to sustainability, you could definitely see and make the argument that durability is a mainstream kind of shoe attribute, right? So with maybe fit and style and such, durability is important overall, whether you're talking about sustainability or not. So it's not necessarily super surprising that rises to the top. I agree with you, back to the previous discussion that we as well were surprised to see the animal welfare piece as high. Yeah. And I think that, the younger generations are kind of a little conflicted, it feels like, because what we're seeing here too is they value sustainability, but they also are pretty okay with shoes not lasting all that long. Yeah. And there's a certain amount of, the social media culture that you're going to have a new pair of shoes in each one of those Instagram posts, or, a little bit of the fast fashion that goes on in the younger demographics, vis-a-vis the older ones. So it's interesting to see this high percentage of it's okay for shoes to last a year or less, while there's still the people who are saying that sustainability is important.
Yeah. And I should say we did a question about, these are US based results in particular. It's much harder to get at European databases to get consumers and shoppers. There's also regulations and other issues you have to look at around surveys. but this is predominantly U.S. population. I think most of this, you can look at a lot of these different answers and kind of apply it elsewhere. I would take caution though to be very, very careful, because I think culture is different around these issues and ideas. I think in Europe, when it comes to sustainability, there's a different knowledge base and threshold of what they expect and anticipate and care about than in the U.S. And then same in Asia. I think there's just different ways. So this is predominantly U.S. based. If we can do Europe or China in the future, or Asia in the future, we'll try to do that. But for our purposes, this was the best survey that we could run right now in the largest marketplace in the world. The other thing, fortuitously, we also asked about animal welfare. We didn't expect animal welfare to be that high, honestly, but we did ask about it because it's a growing concern to brands. So when we formulated the survey, we took all the questions that we could and we narrowed it down to what we thought we could really ask and get true answers from consumers on. But many brands and companies are asking about animal welfare in production. And they were particularly concerned about, some brands will never talk about animal welfare. Some brands will talk about it. Some have mixed feelings about what they are with their product. It just depends. But the question was, when it comes to things being too political, what's a turnoff when you talk about animal welfare? So, from below, how do companies talk about animal welfare, caring about the issue without getting too political to turn you off, which is very important, I think, is in this political environment that we have. And I think the majority of people here, again, this is all that apply. So we didn't want to distort it and sort it, but we want to give the option to the consumer to really tell us how they felt about it and kind of get a heat map to it. But I think overwhelmingly, it's no animals were harmed in the making of this product, or no animal testing. So obviously you have animal fur that's in there too, that's there, but by and far, I mean, it's no animals were harmed in the making. So if you're marketing around animal welfare, these are the terms you should look at, I think, and consider. We then get into sustainability around how you make shoes, so production and sustainability, and then we went into sustainable materials. So we actually want to look at not just the overall shoe and what you think and how we describe it, but material level and production level, which I think is very important. And here you've got, when it comes to production, we ranked these and we weighted these based on the responses about how we rank all these. 1 to 6 for this one was they want to make sure that the CSR programs are airtight and making sure that you're paying a fair wage to the workers, the working conditions are good. And then that goes into reducing or recycling production waste, and then down to emissions and beyond that. So these are the things when you're focusing your efforts to communicate your sustainability programs to consumers to consider what you're talking about when you're making shoes, ethically, fair wages, reducing waste. And I would say on the second point, what's very critical to that is, and again, in the analysis we break down, women, females. So females overall was their second overall was reducing factory emissions. So if you look at the analysis, it'll help you break down a little bit better about how you target it. But for the second one, we were really interested and excited to see the reduction in production waste because of FDRA's shoe waste program that we already have that we're running in China right now, and it'll spread. But training factories on how to actually identify production waste, segment those, keep them out of the waste stream, and recycle those and actually generate an ROI. We're doing that right now, and it's a plug and play program that people can adopt. So interesting to see that. And then down at the bottom, describe sustainable materials. So you have a list there. Again, when I looked at the list, I would have assumed that like bio-based would have been closer to recycled up the list. But again, I think I look at these issues a lot, and I think about and I hear about all these new materials coming out and different ways to say it. But biodegradable was number 2. If you joined us for the webinar the other week on bio products, biodegradable as a shoe is very difficult to achieve because of the timeline that biodegradable means within that phrase. I think it's something like 180 days it has to biodegrade, almost like a compost type heap. So it's very difficult. But these are the terms when they're seeing something around materials that they think, oh, that's a really sustainable material type. And again, in the analysis, you break it down. The other surprise was vegan. It's very low. Even though I see a lot of articles coming out on vegan and the language around vegan this and vegan that. And I had to ask a few people about that because I'm not ideological on vegan or non-vegan, and we stay within the lines and try to get to where consumers actually are, where the industry actually is. And it seems that people who push vegan a lot are very aggressive about it in some ways. And to a general population, maybe it's a little bit too aggressive, some of the marketing around vegan, because it seems to come with a choice, right? It's vegan or nothing, or it's vegan or, and there's always some qualification to it within their marketing. So if you're marketing vegan, we should be very, very careful here, I think, to think about how we use that and qualify that. And I think we'll get into that here. We do have a question here about recycled materials are number one here, but rank really low on the other scale. I don't know why. I saw that too. I don't know why we have it on the materials listed as recycled here, but then when it comes to overall shoe, that we don't have that. And the only thing I can think of is at the material level, when you're marketing at the material level, they're looking at these terms more than at the whole level. And I think Gretchen showed that on their example where they were saying, if you put recycled at the very front of this product description, do you get more of a jump or not? So I think it depends on where you focus your efforts on your marketing of recycled in the top level description or in the base level description. Because in some ways, maybe you want to market the most durable sneaker in the marketplace versus recycled or something like that, maybe only the description. So for us, the analysis of this is we turn this over to you guys get the raw material, the raw data, and you can start to see the breakouts a little bit better, and start to make even more informed decisions than what we put together here. So I hope that helps a little bit.
I think it bears mentioning also, Andy, that, the question was somewhat different in the sense of this was specific to describing materials. And the other one had a number of factors in there about animal welfare, about promotion of fair ethical trade, and so the question was somewhat different. And compared to those factors, the respondents ranked use of recycled materials lower than those other practices, let's say, whereas this is specifically about how do you describe materials to make them sound most sustainable.
Yeah. And we did another question that popped in was, given these results, should brands focus on animal friendly as opposed to vegan? We're not in the business of telling you how to run your marketing. I'm just giving you the data and letting you know what the consumers say, but possibly it depends on what you're looking for. I think the marketing experts and a lot of brands know how to. I have a friend who works in marketing and he knows how to say red 18 different ways, right? So same thing here is I think this is a guide. This isn't going to tell you what to do or what not to do. And if your culture is very pro-vegan and that's what you want to market, then go ahead and market that. But I do think if you're looking to translate things into sales, you just have to watch your language, as my mother always tells me. All right. So then we asked, okay, when we talk about, these issues, what do we care most about? Do we care more about the environment and the environmental processes and materials, or we care more about the factory and the wages? And this? So it's almost like, when we talk about ESG, is the E bigger than the S when we're talking about the G, or is it vice versa? It's both. Honestly, the response was split. Consumers care about both things. You have to talk about both things and care and make sure that your CSR is buttoned up just as much as your environmental work in the factory and throughout your supply chain is buttoned up. And that it is interesting, Gretchen, to see the breakout though, because you see baby boomers care a lot about the environment, and then the Gen Z and millennials care more about the factory. So in that sense, it's a little bit, tilted in a different way.
Yeah, the activism comes through.
Right. And then at the bottom, again, there's the factory waste program. If you go to shoesustainability.com, you can learn more about that. I don't know if we actually have that up yet. We're launching a more robust version to explain how to get involved in that, and we'll launch that out soon. Analysis about promoting. So this really gets down to certifications. So we talk a lot about certifications and the need to verify. So we talk about it from an operational level of saying, okay, like we know we need chain of custody and we need to prove this out for legal and compliance and all that stuff. But from a marketing standpoint, it's interesting. I think a lot of customers trust brands to make sure that they're doing the right thing, but equally, 60-40 split somewhere in there. People would like that verification by third-party labs. So as we think about certifications and the need and the symbols and the logos, that's, it jives with the movement towards that and the trust towards that. And then again, we ask about vegan here. We did another breakout on vegan because that continues to be a big issue, just like the animal welfare. Again, these questions were formulated by brands. So a lot of brands came to us and were asking about how they talk about vegan leather or vegan other types of products, whether they need to break it out or not. So we asked, and here it is. 72% say if you say vegan, it's too vague. So you need to say vegan what? Like what specifically makes it vegan? Because I think there's a concern that there are plastics. There are equally a number of great plant-based alternatives that are coming online that are vegan that I think people are adopting. But the consumer is, when it comes down to it, saying exactly when you say this vegan leather, what does this really mean to me when I'm making this purchasing decision? So they prefer to know what it is and why. So
it seems like there's confusion across the board about veganism. I mean, we were just talking about this at dinner with my daughter last night, who is vegan, and she commented that so many times you get something vegan off a restaurant menu and it comes with cheese on top of it, which of course is not vegan. So, it is overall a pretty confusing topic. And when you layer on that, the fact that production of materials that can state to be vegan can be very environmentally unfriendly in some cases, it's a pretty cloudy picture. And that's very interesting that the survey results really corroborated that 72% are really kind of asking for more information.
Yeah. And I'm just reading the chat box coming all in. So I'll go down to the next one. All right. We get into how do you prefer? So this is an interesting proposition because some of these are my own hunches that I came up with. But the question I had was, we have this movement towards filtering. I see this on Nordstrom.com. I see this on other sites where it's like, you can shop our sustainable collection, which I think is pretty cool. The difficulty is what is that? How do we delineate a sustainable shoe versus a non-sustainable shoe, like processed product, all that stuff. So obviously those are difficult things, but shoppers are interested. So you got a large portion that says, yeah, I actually like that idea, and I would shop that particular area. You got another, the pie's kind of split around 3. You got, yeah, I like that idea, but I wouldn't start there, which means I'm either looking for need or want or cost. So the sustainability filter is interesting, and I might use it, but I might not. And then a third equally is like not really an issue for me when I'm shopping for shoes. Almost saying if the sustainability is built into the shoe and I like it and I like the price and I like the color and I guess it's comfortable, then I'm probably going to buy it. So that's cool, but I don't need a filter to help me with that. And then along with that too, and Gretchen can jump in here too about paying more for sustainable shoes, but product in general, as you guys are looking at this. But are you willing to pay a little bit more? So obviously the difficulty of this is I can't compare 2 products in this survey, right? This is a general assessment. First Insight can take your shoes and can compare them with another product in your line or some other type of shoes to try to get at, would they pay more for the sustainable shoe versus traditional shoe? But for our own purposes, theoretically, and this is also a Buy American question. And we always qualify this at FDRA is if you ask somebody, hey, would you buy American? Would you rather buy American than overseas? They're going to say, heck yeah. And then you're going to say, great, it's going to be $50 more for that pair of boots. They're going to say, wait a minute. So same thing here. I think this just gives us good data points to say, we can bump it up a tad bit if we're marketing sustainability. And this is, I think, what brands are doing really good at is they're doing collaborations or limited product lines or whatever as they test out and learn about sustainability. So they're launching unique products. They're adding a little bit more to it so they can do that. And as they move forward, but traditional line, I think year in, year out, same product line you've been selling, those Vans that have been selling for 30 years, same type. If you change processes, material, etc. Could you charge a little bit more? Yeah, a little bit more. We're not talking about a lot of money here, but you can see the breakouts there. Gretchen, is this kind of jive with what you guys are seeing across other industries?
Yes, it is. And, one thing is that, as I showed in the examples earlier, what we often do is test two items, one labeled as, being sustainable or having recycled content or whatever, and the other not. And so you're able to then, in that case, isolate the specific value of that sustainability to the consumer. And those results have been shown to be predictive. What is a bit tougher, admittedly, is as somebody pointed out in the Q&A, we as human beings are notoriously bad at predicting our own actual behavior on a survey. So, but what we can do is compare, like you're saying, Andy, between the different generations and the different categories of how much people would be willing to pay more or less. But it's definitely consistent with what we're seeing. And that is honestly something that we help a lot of our customers to do also internationally.
Cool. This is an interesting question. With the willingness to pay more being so low, but the desire being so high, do you think there's a need for education behind the logistics? 100%. I think part of the sustainability story is not assuming that the consumer understands how shoes are even made to begin with. They just assume that it's made properly and sent in, and they don't understand that if you're using better, why is the material better than traditional? It's almost like we need training videos for consumers in some ways. But then the question is, will they actually watch that? The question above said, do you do more research? Some people do, some people don't. So I think it's difficult. I think part of what this is around education, around sustainability, is societal movement towards that. I think the biggest thing that's going to help shoe sustainability, could be completely wrong, usually am, electric vehicles and the whole push towards buying sustainable products broadly will help shoe sustainability in terms of sales, I think. Here's another really interesting thing. This is also my own hunch that I came up with and thought about, because I just don't know that 2-day shipping matters. And I know everybody's done this because of Amazon and consumers demand this, but do they really demand this? And if they don't, then what can you give them to delay shipping so that you can do it by ground? You can increase the amount of days, reduce your cost, reduce emissions by doing it air freight overnight. And this is really interesting. 41% says if you give them a 10% off coupon off their next purchase, they would delay shipping from 2 days to more to an eco-friendly, eco-conscious shipping method. So if you give them a coupon, you can save money and ship it a little bit longer. 1% off did okay. 20% was, both in upper and middle. We're talking about give me some reward points. So your reward members are just saying, give me some more of these points and I'll be happy with that and I'll make that choice. I think, when it actually comes to checking out, will they choose that? This is theoretical. I actually think they would. I think they would if you popped up a coupon or something like that, or our reward points and say, can you get this in 4 days instead of 2? Maybe they would. And what does it hurt a brand or retailer to do that? To even try it, to save some money and effort. So I think it's interesting in that aspect. Gretchen, when you look at this, what do you think?
I think that it is pretty consistent with a lot of the research that we've done as well, and including a lack of knowledge both of the environmental impact of this fast shipping, and frankly, your companies are probably experiencing this directly, the audience here, but the extreme cost of very fast shipping to a retailer or a brand it's huge. And so there definitely are opportunities both for education and then, creative programs that can have the double positive effect of reducing the extreme costs of fast shipping and reducing the environmental impact of it.
Yeah, and I do remind people, if you're not in logistics or shipping, the holiday surcharges that were supposed to go away in January did not go away. And my guess is with all the inflation with gas and everything else, there's probably even higher charges for delivery, direct to consumer. So these options, the consumer says no, they want it in 2 days. That's fine. It's your traditional method. But if you can get them to push out a little bit further, that'd be fantastic. I also think in some ways it speaks to, if you actually really need shoes, you're going to go to a store and get them locally. Like if you're going to the, your athletic shoes worn out and you want to go for a run, or you're going out to dinner, as we're all hopefully doing soon, you might go out and get it because you actually need them for that moment instead of, looking forward. So possibly let's just see a lot of comments in here. I'm sorry, I'm going through this, but I'm taking notes, and I'll keep all these in mind, about, consumers being willing to round up to support environmental and social efforts on their spend. I see that at the grocery store all the time for March of Dimes or something else. I think that's interesting. This is the first survey we'll do. So as we go and collect more questions for survey number 2 in 2022, or maybe even later this year, depending on when we launch it, I'll keep note of all these things and keep going. And then also see the greenwashing issue about educating consumers and empowering them, but also brands have to watch their language and make sure that they're not greenwashing what they're doing, because there does need to be a level playing field.
That's a good point, Andy, that there's in the cancel culture, right, there's legitimate concern that greenwashing could, let's say, environmental activities could be misconstrued as greenwashing.
Yeah.
And have some blowback, which would be unfortunate, but that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah. There was a question: how does slower transit reflect being eco-conscious benefits? Well, if you're air freighting something from your DC, which is typically in Southern California around the ports, to New York, you have a higher carbon footprint than if you were able to put a box in with other boxes and ship it across the country on train or in a truck. Carbon offsets. Some of these are really good questions that are coming in on here. This is the thing about collecting. We did the best we could on the most important questions from the group. We can get to other questions on carbon offsets and things like that. I think part of the problem too is we can't get too far into carbon offsets generally into the general public because the education there isn't quite there. They know that they don't like carbon and they don't want emissions and they don't, want, greenhouse gases, but they just, if we drill down too far, we're going to lose them and getting into some of these things. Here's packaging. I said, what's the analysis? It's obvious that it's physically obvious. This is one of my biggest pet peeves, is getting a box from a retailer for batteries, and the box is 8 times the size that's needed. And I get a lot of plastic airbags that I got to pop before I stick into my recycling thing. I literally hate that. It's the worst thing in the absolute world. So right size packaging, basically all these are really important. I would say brands don't do enough to publish that they are using recycled content on the boxes themselves. Obviously there's great packaging partners like L&E, et cetera, that you can use that will help you bring that out. But the story, I think, could be told a lot better there. Here's a good question about end of life that we asked, because obviously we work with Souls for Souls and some other people, and it's saying, when you're done with your pair of shoes and you want to get rid of them, what's the most helpful way for you to get rid of them? My assumption always has been that you could send them an email 6 or 8 months out from first purchase and remind them that they could recycle them in some way or donate them, or send an email to them. Especially now with more people buying online, you have that access to that information. 28% prefer to drop it off in the store. So you drop box in the store. 41% said they prefer brands to tell me how to donate. In particular, we asked, what does that mean? Email. They're looking for inserts inside of a shoebox. And my guess is they get that insert and they look at that old pair that they're replacing and they'll recycle that. Maybe not the current pair. 21% said, I don't want to get political on this, but a lot of people are just saying, I know what to do and you don't have to tell me what to do, whether it's government or brand. So, but I think this is important when we think of end of life and people wanting to donate their shoes or whatever it is. I think a lot of people take it down to Goodwill, to be honest, or they drop it off on one of their shoe distribution things on the side of the road, predominantly. But if there is something in store, DSW does this really well. You can drop off in the store and they'll make sure Soul Circle gets it. And it's a great eco-friendly way to collect a large amount of shoes and put them on a truck and ship them somewhere to get them into somebody else's hands. So the recycling aspect we'll get into, or this is a good point to say, in the summer, we're running a sustainability series. It's going to be a digital summit over 3 weeks that's spread out through September every other week. And one is going to be on recycling, waste management, and circularity that will deal with end of life and some of these issues that we deal with here. So we'll get into depth for that. But this, it's just, we threw that out. How important is pollution reduction claims? I think this is the last one, I do believe. We had brands saying, we have issues with production, emissions or emissions at our headquarters or whatever it is. Do people really care about that? And so you can see the breakout here. Yeah, they do care. It needs to be communicated clearly on the company's website and in the product details. It says 42%. 29% says it's important, but just on the company's website. I think most people try to include that in their annual reports or on their company websites. Listed in the product details, I don't see too much of that. I also haven't had any experience with any consumers complaining that they don't see the emissions calculations on there. I know some brands are putting those on there themselves voluntarily, but I haven't seen anything like that. Does that jive, Gretchen, with what you guys are seeing?
Yes, and from the previous discussion, I thought it was interesting that 10% said that they're interested in the recrafting kinds of options that a brand like Allen Edmonds is offering, which is a pretty healthy percentage, actually.
Okay. I am. Let's see. Let's see if I can do this properly. Everybody. Okay. In the chat box, I just dropped in the link to the report that you can grab. A couple other questions talking about carbon offsets, part of choosing at checkout. Do you want to do like a carbon offset or that was the other question, was would they be willing to round up their money a little bit for environmental causes, et cetera. I think those are really interesting ways. In some ways it costs nothing to try it. I don't think too many people would be put off, depending on the brand. I mean, if you have an outdoor brand, especially, or your culture and your whole ethos of marketing is around sustainability and built around that, like adding that to a website, just asking them, I mean, what does it cost you to code that just to see what they would do if that would work? I think it would be really interesting, but that could be for a future survey as well. And then at the end, here's our demographics. So this is the breakout. I will say we just launched out the email to all the industry. This is a member-only resource. So members, this is the benefit of membership, to contact me, and I can give you the report and the crosstabs so you can see the raw data and do your own deep dives into those things and take a look. And then anybody who was a non-member that was on this, obviously we give you the report that I just dropped into the chat box. And I see a lot of comments flying through and a lot of questions, but that is the report that we have it. We did a deep analysis as we could. We broke it out graphically to help people take a look and see. The goal is to give you something that you can compare yourself to. I know a lot of companies are doing their own surveys, but as an industry-wide benchmark, where does your survey meet against this? Where are the gaps? Why is the gaps there? But also, if you don't have, equally, a lot of people have no surveys on consumer surveys on this. And I think this is equally important. And again, I want to thank our partners at First Insight for running the survey and making sure that the methodology was correct, that we got honest, real answers from actual real shoppers. So Gretchen, thanks to you and Sarah and the whole team there.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. So folks, that's it. I see, other questions coming in, but as you exit out, if you have other questions about the survey, please let me know. But again, if you need a copy of these things, just drop me a line. Again, we have, in the coming months or so, we have many more sustainability initiatives, programs, and events that we'll be running. Very soon, maybe next week or the week after that, we'll be launching that summer series on sustainability. Again, it'll focus on recycled material, recyclability, waste management, circularity, construction, design and production sustainability. And then the third week will be on materials, certifications, and standards. So we're covering all the hot topics the industry needs to know. And hopefully, this survey also will speak to the operations, because I think if you look at what consumers care most about, you can align those things, internally to focus those efforts on what consumers care about to get the most ROI on doing good environmentally, doing good socially, and then ultimately doing good with your product. So with that, it's almost 3:00, but I thank everybody for joining us, and I thank you and I thank First Insight for their great partnership with this. I wish everybody well. Please have a great day. And until next time, please look in your inbox for my next spam email to you on sustainability. Thanks very much. All right. So that was the recording of the webinar that we did on our shoe sustainability consumer survey. Again, 1,000 shoe shoppers nationwide. Matt, you participated and listened to that along the way. Was there anything in particular that stood out to you as we kind of wrap this up?
Yeah, I think really communicating effectively with your consumers and knowing what your narrative is and knowing terms that really reverberate and knowing which terms not to use. It's interesting that vegan term seems to be highly political, right? And so avoiding those things that will kind of box the company in so that their narrative is not as impactful as to what they're doing in the sustainability space is really important. Words matter. And if you're using the wrong words and the consumer's confused, or they put you in a box, in some kind of political box in their minds, you're not going to do yourself a service. And so I think this survey helps our members and helps the broader industry understand those landmines that are out there as they start to craft what their messaging is around their sustainable product.
Yeah, exactly. Watch your language was a constant thing that I heard from my mother in my life. Still hear from her. But likewise, again, making sure that you button down your language so that you're actually increasing your sales and speaking truthfully about what your claims are. You definitely don't want to make a claim and then it blow up in your face later. And I think as an industry, we're getting there closer and closer as we all start to use better materials and hopefully, improve our processes. But again, please go to the report. It's on FDRA.org and the Intel Center for all the members. You can access the full report there and all the crosstabs to help you kind of get a little bit better at your marketing game, but also feed it back into your operation so your team knows what to prioritize and what to work on and focus on. And again, and if you're an FDRA member, we do monthly working group calls on a range of issues from carbon reductions to emissions and waste management issues, all number of things on sustainability. It's one of our most active working groups with almost 200 companies on every single call. So we invite you to join those calls, listen in, participate, share. The whole idea is just like this podcast, is to share best practices, benchmark, and prevent those pits that people can fall into if you're not careful. Sometimes the most important thing is not making those mistakes. So again, thanks to First Insight for helping us put that report together and launch it. And hopefully folks can use that. And it'll probably be an annual report at this point. So very excited about that. And also excited about our, in August and September, we're doing a digital shoe sustainability summit. Just to put a big plug there, it's going to be on recycling, footwear, waste management. It'll be on materials, and it will be on design and development, how we start at the very start of the process to design and develop product that is sustainable on the operations side. So go to shoesustainabilitysummit.com to learn more about that. Super affordable, special rates for FDRA members. But with that, thank you very much again for listening to the Shoe and Show. This is the Footwear Industry Podcast. We hope everyone's out there safe and healthy. Keep buying your shoes. And until next time, Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.